Hello, welcome to Benjamin Tree. Today we're going to be learning about the functions and or. In the past we already talked about or, but we're going to review it today because it's very similar with the function and. So what we're going to do here is we have all of these students with different GPA and SATs and ACT scores, and we're going to decide based on their scores if they can get a scholarship. The GPA requirement is a 3.5 or higher. The SAT requirement is a 1400 or higher, and the ACT requirement is a 32 or higher. Okay, so what we're going to do, first we're going to look at a low requirement. So in order to be a candidate for a scholarship, the student must have one of the following scores that's higher than the requirement in order to get the candidacy. So what we're going to be using for this is we're going to be using the OR function. Now an OR function is a logical test. They have inside of the parentheses, we have lots of logical tests. A is greater than B, or this is equal to, or this is not equal to. If one of these come out as true, then the OR function will result in a true display. So it kind of thinks is if A or B or C or D is true, then we will have a true result. So let's take a look at it. So we're going to start off with, we're going to start off with the GPA requirement. So we're going to say OR. So our first logical test is A3, the GPA score, is greater than equal to I2. Oops, let's put the correct one. I2 over here, the requirements, that's greater than or equal to that. Or if the SAT requirements, B3 is greater than equal to I3, the SAT requirements, or if the ATC score is C3 is greater than or equal to I4. So basically it's saying if the GPA score here is higher than 3.5, if the SAT score here is higher than 1400, or the ACT score here is higher than 32, then we will have a true result. So let's go through and we drag this equation down for all of the different rows. And as you can see, there's a lot of trues here. So a lot of people in this chart here have at least one of the requirements of GPA, SAT, or ACT score. Now, instead of just having true or false, we can add an if statement, and then we could say, have it show us something instead of true or false. So what we're going to do is we're going to say if. Now it's asking for a logical test, and this entire OR function that we put in is a logical test, and it's going to give us true or false. So if it shoots back true, what do we want it to say? We want it to say yes. If it shoots back false, we want it to say no. Okay, so let's go through and drag this in. Now we have a bunch of yeses and nos, and down here we have a little function that counts the number of yeses here, and you can see 12 people out of 15 are eligible to apply for the scholarship. Now we're going to go to a high requirement. So what we want for the high requirement is we want the students here who are applying to have all of these meet the requirements. So instead of using or, we're going to use and. So and is again logical tests, but this time all of them have to be true in order to have the results of true. So this is saying if A and B and C and D are true, then we will result in true. So let's go ahead and write that equation. So here we go. So if we say, if we want to say and, so our first logical test, if the SAT score is greater than equal to the SAT requirement, and the SAT score is greater than or equal to the SAT requirement, and the ACT score is greater than or equal to the ACT requirement, then we will say true. So if all three of these are true, then we will result in true. So let's drag this down here. And as you can see, now there's only a few trues. And again, we're going to change that to have an if statement here. So if this and statement, whatever it shows as true or false, that's our logical test. If it shows true, then we're going to say yes. If it shows false, then we're going to say no. So we go back here and drag this back through. And now this time we only have 4 yeses. So as you can see, the requirements are much higher. Next, we're going to do a medium requirement. Okay, so instead of only having 1, instead of having all 3, we're just going to have 2. Now, in order to do this, we have to mix and or. So what happens is we want 2 of these to be true to get this. So we're going to say we have 3 choices. If one of these 3 choices are true, then we'll say true. So the first choice is GPA and SAT are both above the requirement. The second choice is SAT and ACT are both above the requirement. And the third choice is GPA and ACT are both above the requirement. So in order to do this, we have to have an OR, and inside of each OR logical test, we're going to put the AND function. So let's go through and write that. So we're going to start off with OR. Okay, so our first logical test, instead of just doing a regular logical test, let's use the function that both of these are true. So we're going to say A3 is greater than or equal to I2, which means the GPA is greater than or equal to the GPA requirements. Okay. And that the SAT score is greater than or equal to the SAT requirements. Okay, so that's our first logical test for OR, that both GPA and SAT scores are greater than or equal to. Now we're going to make our second logical test, and that's going to be that both the SAT and ACT scores are true. So we're going to put the AND function in. So our first logical test for this AND function is that the SAT score is higher and that the ACT score is higher than the requirements or equal to. Okay, so that's our second logical test. Okay, now our third logical test is that the GPA and SAT scores are both higher. Okay, so we're going to do one more and. So we're going to say A3 is greater than I2, which is the GPA is higher than the GPA requirement, and that C3 is greater than or equal to I4. That means the ACT score is higher than the requirement or equal to. Okay, so again, we have 3 OR logical tests, and inside of each logical test is an AND logical test with 2 requirements. So again, if GPA and SAT are both true, or SAT and ACT are both true, or GPA and ACT are both true, then we will result in a true display. So we go ahead and put that in, and we drag it down. All right, so this time we have some trues and some falses. Not as much as the higher requirement, or not as many trues as the low requirement, but more trues than the high requirements. And again, we can change this and put an if statement in. But if this giant OR thing, which is our logical test, if that is true, write yes. If that is false, write no. Okay, and then we can come here and drag this equation down. So now you can see we have 7 students that meet the requirements. All right, so again, we've learned about and OR today. OR is a function with lots of logical tests, and if one of them is true, then you get a true result. And then we have the AND function, which is a lot of logical tests, but if all of them are true, that's the only way we're going to get a true result. So for practice, we have a draft eligibility. So here in the D column, write a formula that uses the AND and the OR functions, and it should display yes or no. Does this person have to register for the draft? So we have 2 criteria. The first criteria is all men from the ages of 18 to 35 who are not going to college have to apply for the draft. Okay, if it says yes, they're going to college. If it says no, they're not going to college. The second criteria here is all men of the ages 23 to 35 have to go regardless of college status. Okay, so if you're 23 to 35 and you're a man, you have to go. It doesn't matter if you're in college or not. So use these two criteria, make an and or functions into your formula to have the Excel automatically figure out who has to apply for the draft and who doesn't. You can check your answers here at the practice answer key. Thank you for using Benjamin Tree today. We hope you learned a lot. If you have any questions, please leave a comment on our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, or on the blog. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.